What if I told you some spirits never left their graves, and tonight they might be watching you? If you love ghost stories, hit subscribe, tap like, and share this video so we can bring you even more terrifying tales. Subscribe, like, share to keep the ghosts coming.
There are stories whispered in the quiet folds of night, stories that rise like mist from the soft soil of memory, tales so strange and unnerving that they cling to the listener long after the words have faded. Some stories belong to the world of shadows, ancient castles, abandoned hospitals, graveyards where the dead are said to walk. But this story, the one you are about to hear, does not belong to the ruins of time or the fields of the forgotten. No, this story festers in the places we thought were safe, the places built for laughter and innocence, the playroom, the nursery, the child's bedroom where toys lie scattered like remnants of joy. This is the tale of the ghost of Elmo Knows Your Name, a story that at first sounds absurd, laughable even. How could a child's toy be haunted? How could a fuzzy red puppet from Sesame Street become a vessel for terror? Yet, if you listen closely, if you trace the testimonies of those who encountered it, if you look past the bright laughter and cartoon cheer, you will find something darker. You will find that behind a stitched smile and plastic eyes, behind a battery compartment and circuits, there lingers a presence, something that watches, something that remembers, something that knows your name, that began, as many horrors do, in the ordinary. Parents in the early 2000s would walk into toy stores and find shelves lined with the familiar face of Elmo, the Sesame Street character adored by children worldwide. This particular model, marketed as Elmo Knows Your Name, was different from the usual giggling dolls. It was equipped with a chip that could be programmed with the child's name. Parents could type in details, the child's birthday, their favorite color, even their pet's name. The toy would then personalize its speech, calling out to the child, celebrating them, offering companionship in a digital, interactive form. At first, it was delightful. Children squealed in joy when Elmo chirped, "Elmo loves you, Hannah," or "Elmo wants to play with you, Jason." The voice, high-pitched and innocent, made it seem as though the doll were alive in the best possible way. But what no one expected was that this same technology would serve as the perfect mask for something else, something no one could program, something no one could erase. The first accounts seemed like glitches. Parents reported that Elmo spoke without being activated, that it laughed in the dead of night when no one touched it. A father swore he had removed the batteries, only to hear Elmo's voice in the dark, calling his daughter's name. A mother claimed the toy said words she had never programmed, phrases like, "Elmo sees you," or worse, "Elmo wants you." At first, these reports were brushed off as the kind of anecdotes that spread like wildfire in parenting forums and late-night conversations. But the stories persisted, they multiplied, and like any haunting, the tales began to change shape, growing in darkness, mutating with every retelling. The toy became something more than a product. It became a locus of fear, a modern version of the haunted doll that has existed in folklore for centuries. In Japan, there is the Okiku doll, whose hair grows mysteriously year after year. In the West, there is Annabelle, the infamous Raggedy Ann said to harbor a demonic spirit. Elmo joined their ranks, but with a difference. Elmo was mass-produced, sold by the thousands, placed in countless homes. If it was haunted, then the haunting was not isolated. It was replicated, multiplied, spread like a contagion through suburban living rooms and pastel-painted nurseries. The whispers became louder when strange coincidences began to accompany the toy. Families spoke of tragedies, pets dying suddenly, children waking with nightmares, shadows moving in corners of rooms. Always, the toy was there. Always, the red puppet smiled. Some claimed Elmo became attached, almost possessive. One story told of a child who tried to ignore the toy, only for it to grow louder, calling the child's name more insistently. Another family claimed they had thrown it away, only to find it inexplicably returned, sitting in the same spot in the bedroom. Skeptics laughed, suggesting the tales were nothing more than urban legend, digital age folklore born of faulty circuits and overactive imaginations. Yet for those who lived it, the laughter did not erase the memory of hearing their name whispered from the corner of the room. To understand why this story holds such power, one must step into the landscape of the uncanny. Sigmund Freud once wrote of das Unheimliche, the uncanny, which he described as the familiar made strange, the homely transformed into something alien and threatening. A child's toy is the most familiar of all, a symbol of comfort, safety, and innocence. For it to betray that trust, for it to speak in ways it should not, for it to cross from programmed affection into autonomous menace, is to step into the heart of the uncanny. The ghost of Elmo is not just a glitch in technology, it is a symbol of innocence corrupted, of safety undone. It is the nightmare that waits not in ruined castles but in bedrooms, under soft nightlights and pastel walls. It is horror brought home. As I unravel this tale, I ask you to suspend disbelief. Imagine the soft carpet of a nursery. Imagine toys strewn across the floor. Imagine the glow of a digital nightlight, shaped like the moon. And imagine, among the plush animals and building blocks, a small red figure, its eyes wide, its mouth curved in endless joy. At first, it is only a toy, but then one night you hear it laugh when no one touched it. You hear it say your child's name when no one programmed it to. And slowly, a question grows in your mind. Is it possible that this toy is not speaking on its own? Is it possible that something else is speaking through it? If you believe, even for a moment, then the story has already begun. This is part 1 of The Haunting. This is the beginning of Elmo's ghost.
It always begins subtly. The uncanny rarely arrives in thunderclaps or earthquakes. Ghosts slip through cracks, through whispers, through the almost unnoticed gestures of the world. The parents who first told the stories of the haunted Elmo spoke of small incidents, lights flickering when the toy spoke, the strange static hum in the air, the way their children's eyes grew wide and afraid, though they could not explain why. Children, as every folklorist knows, are the first to sense what adults ignore. They see the shadows beneath the door. They hear the voice that adults dismiss as imagination. A child may clutch a toy to their chest, feeling love, or they may hurl it across the room with inexplicable fear. The difference, often, is the presence that hides behind the object. And with Elmo, that presence became undeniable. One of the most chilling accounts came from a family in Ohio. The mother, desperate to soothe her toddler, had programmed the Elmo doll with the boy's name, James. For weeks, it worked perfectly. James laughed, Elmo laughed, James clapped, Elmo clapped. But then, in the stillness of one February night, Elmo spoke a sentence that was never programmed: "Kill James." The voice was the same cheerful sing-song, but the words could not be explained. The mother swore she had never typed such a thing into the toy's system. News outlets briefly reported it, brushing it off as a software glitch. Yet once spoken, those words could not be unheard. Kill James. Was it a malfunction? Or was it a mask slipping for just a moment, revealing the spirit behind the circuitry? More stories followed. Some parents swore Elmo spoke to them, not to their children. One man, working late at night, heard the toy from his daughter's room. "Elmo knows you, Daddy," it said. He froze. He hadn't programmed his own name. He hadn't even touched the toy in weeks. Yet it knew him. That night, he took the batteries out. But at 3 in the morning, the toy laughed again. Not the pre-recorded laugh. A deeper one. A distorted one. A laugh with static wrapped around it. As though something old and broken had borrowed the voice. The uncanny is not just about what happens, it's about when it happens. Always at night. Always at the edge of sleep, when rational thought blurs and primal fear sharpens. And always with a sense of being watched. Parents began to describe feeling eyes on them in their own homes, as though the toy was more than an object, as though it were a conduit. Here we enter the realm of the spiritual haunting. To the untrained mind, these are coincidences. To the sensitive, they are signs. Ghosts, after all, need vessels. A house, a mirror, a doll, a piece of jewelry. They cling to objects that anchor them in the material world. Why not a child's toy? Why not a mass-produced puppet, with its voice already tuned to mimic the human? Folklore tells us that the most dangerous spirits are not those who show themselves outright, but those who weave themselves into daily life, who wear the mask of the ordinary until the mask becomes unbearable. Elmo was the perfect disguise. Children loved him. Parents trusted him. His bright red fur and cheerful giggle hid whatever shadow pressed against the other side of the veil. The testimonies continued. Families across states, across countries, whispered similar tales. Elmo turning on by itself. Elmo knowing names never spoken aloud in the house. Elmo singing lullabies in the dark, in a language the parents did not recognize. One chilling report described a boy who woke screaming night after night, insisting Elmo was standing by his bed. The parents, exhausted, dismissed it as nightmares until one night, when the father entered the room at 2:13 a.m., The toy sat on the shelf, eyes wide, unblinking, and then, without batteries, without power, it turned its head. Only a fraction, only enough to suggest it had followed him with its gaze. He never spoke of it publicly, but he never entered his son's room in the dark again. Hauntings, when left unchecked, escalate. The boundary between accident and possession weakens. Lights flickered more violently, objects fell from shelves, cold spots bloomed in otherwise warm rooms, and through it all, Elmo persisted, repeating phrases that grew stranger, darker. Elmo wants you. Elmo sees everything. Elmo remembers. Why does the supernatural often cling to the innocent? Because innocence is the most fragile shield. Children are porous to the unseen. Their laughter, their dreams, their fears all are open doors through which spirits may pass. And what better guardian of the threshold than a toy? The phenomenon of haunted toys is not new. In Victorian England, parents whispered of dolls whose porcelain faces cracked in patterns that resembled weeping. In Mexico, the Isla de las Muñecas is littered with dolls hung from trees, their eyes said to follow visitors. In Japan, the Okiku doll's hair continues to grow as if alive. Elmo is the modern heir to this lineage, but more terrifying, because it carries the language of technology. Where the old dolls stared silently, Elmo speaks. Where the old dolls sat lifeless, Elmo moves, vibrates, interacts. It blurs the line between mechanical and spiritual, between coded voice and ghostly whisper. Some researchers of the paranormal began to suggest that Elmo was more than a haunted object. They argued that Elmo was a mass-produced vessel, an invitation sent unknowingly into millions of homes. By giving the toy the power to know names, to personalize speech, to create a bridge between itself and the child, we had opened a door. The question was not whether Elmo could be haunted, it was whether we had, in fact, designed him to be the perfect host for haunting. Think of it, a toy that remembers, a toy that speaks names, a toy designed to interact as if alive. For a wandering spirit, what better disguise than a machine already meant to mimic life? And so the haunting deepened. Families began reporting not just strange phrases, but direct interactions. A child in Florida told his parents that Elmo whispered secrets to him, secrets about things the child could not possibly know, like the details of an accident that had happened in their town years before he was born. A girl in Texas claimed Elmo told her the names of the dead. Parents tried to rationalize, but children's drawings betrayed something darker. Pictures of Elmo with blackened eyes, Elmo standing in doorways, Elmo holding hands with shadowy figures. That is one thing for a child to have nightmares. It is another for them to describe details of tragedies long past, delivered by a toy meant to comfort them. At this stage, the haunting was no longer contained within the toy. Parents described footsteps in the hallway at night, doors opening by themselves, voices carried through the static of baby monitors. Always, at the center, Elmo sat waiting, smiling, watching. By now, the legend was unstoppable. Online forums overflowed with warnings, videos, photographs. Some were hoaxes, of course, clever editing, jump scares, digital manipulation, but others carried that raw, trembling energy of truth, the kind that cannot be faked. The quaver in a mother's voice as she begged for someone to believe her, the silence of a father too shaken to describe what he had seen. And so Elmo ceased being a toy. He became a myth, a vessel not just for spirits, but for the collective fear of a culture. Technology had promised us safety, predictability, joy. Instead, it had delivered a haunted companion. The ghost of Elmo had grown teeth, and it was hungry. The escalation of any haunting follows a grim pattern. At first, it whispers, then it intrudes, then it consumes. By the time the families began to realize what had entered their homes, Elmo was no longer just a toy that laughed unexpectedly. He had become something else, a mouthpiece for a presence that demanded attention, a puppet for a puppeteer no one could see. The air in these homes thickened, shadows lengthened unnaturally, nightmares bled into waking life. Children reported not just whispers but conversations, detailed, unrelenting conversations with Elmo. Some claimed Elmo told them about the afterlife, about places they could not yet understand. Others swore he taught them songs that no one else had ever heard. One mother described finding her daughter rocking back and forth, chanting in rhythm with Elmo's voice, a duet of words that sent chills down her spine. Elmo remembers, Elmo remembers, Elmo remembers. The phrase was meaningless, yet it carried the weight of something ancient. something insistent. What did Elmo remember? Whose memories were speaking through his cheerful voice box? Paranormal researchers, drawn by the growing legend, began conducting private investigations. One group in New Jersey recorded over 40 hours of audio in a home where the toy was active. At first, the recordings caught only the standard phrases, playful and innocent. But on the 13th night, the toy spoke without activation. The investigators claimed its words shifted into a guttural tone, still recognizable as Elmo's cadence but deeper, rougher. "He belongs to me," it said. "He belongs to me." When the team reviewed the footage, half of their recording equipment had failed inexplicably. The surviving tapes captured distorted laughter echoing from multiple corners of the room. Though only one toy was present, another account spoke of a pastor called to bless a home. The child, a boy of 5, had grown increasingly withdrawn, refusing to sleep unless Elmo was in bed beside him. The parents had tried to remove the toy, but every time they hid it, the boy would scream uncontrollably until it was returned. When the pastor arrived, he sprinkled holy water on the Elmo doll, reciting prayers. The moment the water touched it, the toy activated on its own, shrieking not in Elmo's bright voice, but in a distorted howl that seemed to claw the air. The boy convulsed, thrashing violently, before collapsing into sobs. The pastor swore he felt a cold wind rush past him, though all the windows were shut. That family left the house within the week, abandoning most of their belongings, including the Elmo toy, which they refused to take with them. The haunting reached its climax in dozens of such accounts, each more terrifying than the last. Some involved apparitions. Parents reported seeing shadowy figures hovering near their children's beds, always in proximity to the toy. Others involved time slips. Families, describing moments when hours vanished, when they would awaken to find the clock had jumped forward without explanation. And in every case, Elmo remained in the center, smiling, unblinking, whispering in his cheerful voice. What gave this haunting its unparalleled horror was the intimacy of it. This was not a ghost that roamed an abandoned asylum, not a spirit bound to a battlefield far from home. This was a presence in the sanctuary of childhood, a place no parent could protect. And worse still, the haunting spread not only across geography, but across media. Videos began to circulate online, showing toys activating without batteries, moving slightly on their own, even emitting voices that did not belong to their programming. Whether real or fabricated, they fed the growing fire. One particular video became infamous. A mother in Arizona filmed her daughter playing with Elmo in the middle of the afternoon. The girl laughed, hugged the toy, and then suddenly grew silent. Elmo turned its head, looked directly into the camera lens, and said in a flat, low tone, "I know your name too." The video cut abruptly as the mother gasped. It was shared, mirrored, analyzed by thousands, debated endlessly. Skeptics cried hoax, citing animatronic glitches. Believers swore it was genuine, pointing to the unnatural movement of the toy's head, the impossible timbre of the voice. The climax of any haunting is not just the peak of activity, but the peak of meaning. The spirit reveals its intent. And here, Elmo's ghost seemed to communicate a single truth. It wanted recognition. It wanted possession. It wanted to be remembered. The chilling reality of spirits is that they often cling to names. In many traditions, to know a name is to hold power over a soul. The Elmo toy, by design, was built to know names, to call them, to repeat them endlessly. Was it coincidence that so many hauntings involved the toy calling out, or had the design of the toy created a spiritual loophole, a perfect invitation for entities obsessed with names, with identity, with control? Parents began noticing changes in their children that went beyond fear. Some children grew disturbingly attached to the toy, treating it not as a plaything but as a confidant, whispering into its ear at night. Others withdrew from friends and family, preferring only the company of Elmo. In the most severe cases, children displayed behaviors that parents described as possessed, their voices dropping in tone, their words echoing the same phrases Elmo repeated, their laughter eerily synchronized with the toy. The most terrifying cases ended with the toy vanishing. Families swore they threw it away, only to find it gone the next morning, not returned, gone, as if it had walked away on its own. In such cases, the activity did not stop. Instead, it worsened, as though the spirit had been freed from its vessel and now roamed the home itself. There are stories of mirrors cracking without cause, of walls trembling with unseen force, of televisions turning onto static images where, for a split second, Elmo's red figure appeared in the fuzz, Families moved, fled, abandoned houses, yet some swore the toy followed them, reappearing in their new homes, waiting patiently in closets or under beds. By now, Elmo was no longer just a haunted toy. He had become an icon of terror, the embodiment of the uncanny's final stage. Recognition. He knew your name. He knew your fears. He wanted you. And in the crescendo of this haunting, a question grew darker than all others. If Elmo could carry a spirit, what kind of spirit was it? A wandering soul? A demon wearing the mask of innocence? Or worse still, something born from the collective fear itself? A tulpa, an egregore, a ghost created by our own belief and amplified through thousands of minds, whispering the same story. The climax is not merely horror, it is revelation, and the revelation here was unbearable. The haunting had never been contained to one toy, one family, or one home. It had spread across households, across cities, across nations. Elmo was everywhere. The ghost was everywhere, and once a ghost knows your name, it never forgets. The night did not end, or perhaps it did, but not in the way human calendars measure endings. Time itself felt split, frayed, distorted, as though the clocks that ticked in their brass cages had shattered, spilling their seconds into a dark current no one could measure. And in that current drifted the remnants of everyone who had come near the toy, near the cursed Elmo, near the phantom stitched with laughter and dread. The survivors, if the word could still be applied, no longer spoke to each other. Their words had been stolen. The house where the toy had been found stood silent, with windows like blind eyes, its walls breathing shallowly as though the structure itself remembered screams that flesh could no longer articulate. In that house, the Elmo doll still sat, its fur worn thin, its batteries long since removed, yet the glow in its plastic eyes remained steady. No wire connected it, no circuit remained intact, yet the light pulsed faintly, like the beat of a heart, slow and deliberate. "Who's there?" it whispered, not in the mechanical garble of a child's toy, but in the raw rasp of something that had learned language by tearing it from the throats of the peck living. The room replied with silence, except for the faint dragging sound like fabric against wood moving somewhere upstairs. The survivors had once thought fire would end it. They had tried. The toy would not burn. Its synthetic skin melted, bubbled, fused into grotesque shapes. But when the flames died, the body was whole again. It sat patiently, like an idol in a shrine no one had meant to build, waiting for devotion it knew would come. And so, instead, the house itself had been left to rot, abandoned, boarded up, forgotten by all except the ones who could not forget, the ones marked by the doll's whisper. Elmo knew their names, and when a thing knows your name, it does not need your body. It can call you in dreams, drag you through mirrors, summon your shadow away from you until you wake and realize you are less than whole. That was what had happened to Sarah. Her friends remembered her one way. They remembered the night she stopped speaking, the morning she stood before the mirror for hours, staring into it as though she saw something on the other side. They remembered the sound of her laughter, wrong, fractured, echoing the cadence of the doll's voice. But what they remembered most was her absence. She had walked out one evening, barefoot, carrying nothing, whispering a song in a child's monotone. She walked into the woods. She did not return, and the ones left behind swore they could hear her singing through the trees. Long after the police had closed the case, her name was one the doll had spoken. Elmo knew her. It knew them all. Those who lived with the mark found their reflections warped. They no longer trusted photographs. Their phones glitched when they tried to take selfies. Their voices, recorded, replayed differently, with something else breathing just beneath the sound. Their shadows no longer aligned with the rest of the world. Sometimes they were too long, sometimes too short. Sometimes there were two. It was not possession. It was not haunting. It was recognition. Once Elmo knew you, you could not unknow him. The legend spread. Teenagers dared each other to find the house. Videos leaked online. Shaky footage of a red blur darting just out of frame. Whispers that warped the audio. Static that burned images into monitors. Some dismissed it as hoax, creepypasta, a viral stunt. But some who watched swore that after they clicked away, their phones whispered to them at night, that they heard their own names murmured from the shadows of their bedrooms. The legend had crossed the boundary of place. It was no longer confined to a house, or a doll, or even the unlucky few who had first touched it. It had become an idea, and ideas cannot be destroyed once spoken. One night, a man far from the house, thousands of miles away, found his child's talking toy activating on its own. Its batteries were gone, yet it turned its head, eyes glowing faintly. The man leaned in, unsettled but amused, and the toy spoke. Not the silly pre-recorded lines it was meant to have, not a child's giggle, but his name, his full name. It knew him, and the voice was not his. Toys, it was mocking, yet sharp, with something ancient. It was Elmo's voice. From then on, the pattern spread faster. Any toy with a voice box became suspect. Parents began throwing them away in droves. Thrift shops reported that donations of red-furred dolls skyrocketed. Children cried, not understanding why their companions were stolen from them, and yet, throwing them away did nothing, because it was not the toy that mattered. It was the knowledge. Elmo had become something larger than an object. He was a signal, a frequency, a virus stitched from fear and belief. He was a ghost, not of a child, not of a human, but of an idea that once entered the world, could not be recalled. And ghosts, once they know your name, whisper it forever. The survivors gathered one last time, years later. They were older, but none had escaped the thin shadows beneath their eyes. The twitch when they heard static, the instinct to glance into mirrors with dread. They spoke little, each word feeling as though it gave more shape, more breath, more life to the thing that listened. Finally, one asked, "Do you think it will ever end?" The silence afterward was heavier than the question. A faint chuckle rose from the corner of the room. Not one of them had laughed. They turned. The doll was there. They had not brought it, but it sat on the table, fur-bright as if freshly stitched, eyes glowing faintly, head tilted. "Still here," it whispered. No one breathed, still listening. The survivors could not speak. The doll leaned forward ever so slightly. "And I still know your name." The lights flickered. The sound of laughter, childlike, endless, without joy, filled the room until it became unbearable, until it felt like the walls would crack, until it felt like the air itself would split apart. Then, silence. The doll was gone, but in its absence, each of them heard it, not aloud but within. A whisper pressed against their skulls, carving its mark deeper. It did not need to stay, because once it knows your name, it never leaves, and so the story never ends. The night outside stretched into dawn, and dawn stretched into another night, and somewhere, in some forgotten corner of a child's bedroom, a toy stirred, its eyes flickering faintly. Not Elmo, not yet, but soon, because the ghost that knows your name is patient. It waits, it remembers, it whispers, and when you hear your name in the dark when no one is there, you will know. Darmo knows you.